All right, Toby, here we are. It's beginning of the week or end of the week or middle of the week. Not quite
I
sure
do.
in pandemic time. We're just
Nobody knows anymore.
revisiting an old board here from last time, and uh, I enjoyed our conversation. I thought maybe this thing I've got location board one down below. I meant to rename this dream board because I thought we could try something very similar but slightly different. But just to kind of recap,
Oh, okay.
we had these mood boards where we put all this imagery that seemed somehow to be related, perhaps even if tangentially, and then we had sort of conversations that led to maybe some issues or topics that we came up with.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to come back to that at some point and see if we can take them further. But I think today, what we start off with is maybe we move down to location board one and fill the screen with it. My hope this time is that these images maybe evoke some memories or thoughts, and so we can just look at them for a moment, for a minute or so, and then talk about them each one individually and what they evoke in us. And I'm hoping that perhaps through that we might be able to use one or more of them as like the opening shot of a film, let's say, like what is happening here type of thing. So I'm going to remove this cover. At least I thought I did. Let's try that again. There we go. And so here are a bunch of images that you can look at. I'm gonna for the purpose of the video, I'm gonna scroll through them a little bit. So focus on each one for a moment. Have you seen
Hmm.
any of these before?
Yes, the one that looks like the Forbidden City on the far left middle.
Okay.
But otherwise, no, I haven't seen any of these. Yeah, the boat one at the bottom is
I
amazing.
know. And if you look closely, there's one or more figures. You can see one guy
Hmm.
standing all the way in the bottom left,
No.
but then when you look in the middle, on the sort of second deck up, the sort of the top deck, it looks like there's someone standing there too. Um,
Hmm.
if I put a little doohickey around it,
That's
so
extraordinary.
well, maybe I shouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that draws your attention to him.
Yes, that's amazing.
And in fact, the image next to it is similar. It may look a little esoteric at first, but if you zoom in on it, you can see that that is also, those are tankers.
Oh gosh.
And you get a
Hmm.
sense of scale because there's that fellow on the bottom, two guys on the bottom right who are, I don't know what they're doing there, but
Good lord. Floating all the pieces together. It's amazing.
I think that's a shipyard breaker. I think it's a, I can't remember
Yes.
the whole story, but these ships get brought to this place where people slowly, piece by piece,
Dismantle
yes,
them.
dismantle
Mm-hmm.
them. And I mean, imagine if you lived in a place like that. That was your your whole existence was taking these ships apart. So, have let me ask you. I'm gonna take you up to the upper right for a moment. This Mickey
Okay.
Mouse who's abandoned. Does that make you think of anything from the past? When was the first time you went to Disneyland, if at all?
I've
Oh,
never
you've
been to
never
Disneyland. I've
been.
never been to Disneyland. I've been to Disney World and I've been to Euro Disney, but I've never been to the original.
I see. All right, so you've been to more than I have.
Yeah, well,
How
what?
old were you in your first?
One of our, I don't know if you remember, one of our mutual friends, I'm pretty sure she was a mutual friend of yours, worked at Euro Disney. And I helped her ghostwrite an article for, she sold it to the Times, I think, about how appalling it was.
Really?
Yeah, the Euro Disney was a real mess when it started.
In what way?
Um, in the ways that so there wasn't enough housing for workers, so you had to live off the park, and the deal was that they therefore had shuttle buses that would come and collect you from your wherever you were living, and there were only a couple of tiny villages nearby at that point. Um, and the problem was that the routes these bus drivers took, it took at least 5 hours to get home, 4 to 5 hours to get home. So essentially, when you got home, you had about 3 hours before your shift started
Oh God.
again, and you'd be picked up by another bus. Then they hadn't yet built enough um, restaurant facility for cast.
Mm.
Remember that everyone in the fellow cast member, everyone who works at Disney is a cast member. They hadn't built enough, so you had to do your lunch in a shift, and the shifts overlapped because there were so many people queuing up for food, so you weren't able to eat. So essentially, they were not feeding you, and you weren't getting home until about 1 or 2 in the morning sometimes, and then expected to come back out again at 5 or 6.
So that sounds like slave labor, doesn't it?
Yes. And I mean, they kept saying, "Look, this is only temporary," but they'd opened the park too soon. They were in too much of a
That's
rush.
like,
And then there was something about they also hadn't done enough with the food for the visitors, and so there were a couple of mini riots that got quieted up a lot because they didn't have enough security people.
so this is so Disneyland or Disney World, Euro Disney, in a way, it's like a
Mm,
proto
mm.
prison because you have to manage all these, all the kind of
Yeah, I
all the
guess the amusement
prisoners
park
that
is.
work
Yeah.
there, as well as the staff that come in. And it's like an open air prison where people come in and you have to entertain them
Hmm.
and keep them happy, and then you have to go back to your life when they're gone. That's really, I okay, that's really interesting. I've not
Mm,
known anybody that worked there. Oh, that's, I tell a lie. There was a someone
mm.
I knew who used to spend summers working there, and then they said that they used to break in because they knew how to get in without having to pay. So as a young person, they would get into Disneyland because they enjoyed
All
going
right.
there, but having worked there, they knew the ways in. But
All right.
but I did
Ah.
work on a project where I worked with some designers of amusement parks, and they told me that they
Hmm.
had done work with Disney, and they said that one of the things that is really worth doing is that um, there's a hidden Disney tour that you can take. It costs, I think, a considerable amount of money, but they take you to all the
Mm.
underground tunnels and catacombs that connect the
Oh,
park.
wow.
Because in Disneyland, at least,
Wow.
there's this whole underground
Mm,
network, just like in Washington
mm,
D.C., where everyone
hmm.
travels by these corridors and trains and
Yeah.
electric vehicles
Yeah.
and stuff. And it enables cast members to pop up at different parts of the park very quickly.
Hmm.
And they said that the cafeterias are down there. And they said it's funny because you go to the cafeteria and the cast members eating with each other, and they're cast members who in Disney World should not be together because they're mortal enemies or something, but they're sitting at tables
Right.
together with their heads off, or having lunch or dinner.
Wow.
And they said that there's all these places in the parks they can pop up that are sort of hidden from view. And then
Wow.
the other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is they told me that one of the worst things that can happen to them is for a child to get kidnapped or something like that to happen. So they
Mm.
had this enormous security and surveillance force that would monitor everybody in the park, so that if a child went missing, they could find them very quickly. And so I try to
Gosh.
imagine what Disney security must be like. So that's just all the hidden side. And so looking at this photo of Mickey, I think is sort of interesting in this context of now. I mean, not just what we're talking about, but because
Mm.
Disney Disneyland at least is open during the pandemic, and
Mm.
I just I saw some video footage and was wondering, gosh, who really wants to take their whole family to, I know that some of it's open air, but I mean, a lot of it is these rides in enclosed environments and whatnot. And I,
Hmm.
it almost sounds like child abuse to take them to a place where, you're going
Yes.
to create a hotspot. So I found that fascinating. So I just wondered if there's a seedy side. And then you told me just now about how they treated the workers at Euro Disney and whatnot.
Hmm.
And so, maybe we won't future generations won't look at Mickey in quite the same way. I mean, I have a fondness because for me, going to Los Angeles meant going to Disneyland, and I lived in England, and so every once in a while, in some summers, I would go to LA and I get to go to Disneyland, and to me, it was just this. It was a magical place as a young child, but now you learn more about the realities. Plus, when I when I was doing some amusement work, yeah,
I mean, that's it. So, an interesting question: did your parents like it?
hmm, I've never asked them, but I have been a parent
Mm.
taking kids to Disneyland, and it's awful
Mm.
because unless you're willing to pay thousands of dollars for this sort of VIP tour experience, you're waiting in lines that are an hour and a half, 2 hours long.
Or for someone in a wheelchair. Remember that
Oh,
scam?
okay, okay. I did not know that one, but that makes sense.
That
Okay.
no, there was a. I mean, to me, it's a sign of actual being very clever. But essentially, there are rules where if there's someone in a wheelchair in the queue, you get moved to the front,
Hmm.
obviously. And so people picked up on that. And so a group of very clever people in wheelchairs started hiring themselves out to
Oh,
families.
I see.
So
So they
families
were
would get moved to the
legitimately
front of the queue.
disabled,
Yeah,
but they were
yeah, yeah,
they were
yeah.
hiring their
And they would
services.
pretend to be cousin Timmy, or they pretend to be, nephew so and so, or
Hmm.
uncle so and so. And unfortunately, Disney caught them out because they realized you can't be uncle this to this family and uncle this to this
Right.
family. So they got greedy, unfortunately. But I thought that's a great way to employ people who otherwise might have a hard time getting
Yeah, you could
work.
probably make good money because I mean, if you've
And
ever stood
yeah,
in line for 2 hours with small
oh
children
yeah,
in hot, sweltering temperatures with nothing to do, you understand how painful Disneyland can be.
Hmm.
Um, and you'll pay good money to just get out of there. Anyway,
Damn straight.
so I think it was less crowded when my parents took me. To be honest, I mean, it's become.
Hmm.
But looking at this and
No, no,
thinking
no, it's
about it, I
bad.
mean, Disney is it has the scale of its operations and it's a miniature city basically. And I remember going to I was taken behind the scenes a little bit at their safari park in Florida, and they
Hmm.
have maybe not the same, but it almost looked like just as much land that isn't part of the park that is, because they grow all the plants they need in nurseries. They've got
Hmm.
all this massive operation behind the scenes. So these are cities, and you just think they're run like separate countries. And so you can imagine that maybe the people that learn their chops at Disney become important to run other municipalities and
Hmm.
countries in future
Hmm.
because of what you're describing about workers' rights and managing and
Hmm.
taming them. I mean, maybe Disney is a sort of a kind of proto-fascist thing. We're going to see that authoritarians will co-opt the skills of Disney and then that's why we see Mickey in ruins. This is sort of the people forget what it meant because that Mickey looks a little, it's very mechanical, right? This could be,
Hmm.
you know,
It does looks like a mecha
yes,
Mickey.
a robot policeman or something. Have a nice day. Oh boy, I can't wait to taser you. Um, so that's okay. That's yeah.
I mean, but there is an interesting thing about that, which is now that Disney got into the business of making stuff look super realistic, will future generations after, or maybe even next year, who knows, after the collapse of humanity, What are people going to make of these ruined Mayan ruins from Epcot? Or this, why is there an English medieval village?
Well, if this were the opening shot of a movie, then what do you think this
Hmm.
movie is about? I'm sort of picturing this is like nature's reasserted itself or something. Gaia has
Hmm.
returned, and
Well, don't you just want Charlton Heston in the bottom of the screen going, "You did it, you damn dirty fools"?
is this like the green? What was that? What was it? Green?
No, no, no. That's
Oh,
from
Planet of the Apes. Oh,
Planet of
Planet
the
of the
Apes.
Apes.
That's when he does. That's when he finds the Statue of Liberty
Right.
at the end
Okay.
and realizes that he's been on Earth all along.
Yeah.
I mean, Disney Planet. Could there not be? Does Disney just buy a planet and set itself up there and have all the powers at once? So there's an amusement planet world.
Yeah, that's cool. That's building on this idea that they can run worlds because of what their skill sets
Hmm.
from the amusement park. So yes, I like this. This is a
Yeah, or so maybe they take over a moon. So their deal is, because we've got the organizational skills to enable you to transfer stuff everywhere. Hell, they probably at that point they'll have expanded to Cape Canaveral, so they'll probably have launch facilities at that point. Because and I'm sure I've bored you with this fact before, but Florida was so desperate to win Walt Disney World because it was between them and I think there's somewhere weird like Mississippi was also considered. But Florida was so desperate that they basically gave Disney everything they wanted. So this huge amount of land at very little cost, and the rights to build almost anything they want, including a nuclear power plant.
wow. Okay.
So Disney's never done it, but it has the rights to build a nuclear power plant.
So okay. So building on this,
So
this
a
is cool.
suborbital launch facility is not a huge stretch of the
Okay.
imagination.
So they've terraformed a planet to create.
So they've said, hey, look, we're going to help you terraform a planet. Give us the moon of that
Okay.
planet. And we're going to turn that moon into an entertainment
Right.
thing.
And I think
So that's the price of us using all of our knowledge and know-how about world building to help you get your supplies, but you give us the
right. So it
moon.
won't be Bezos or Musk that'll be the pioneers. It'll be
Hmm.
Mickey, and it'll be the House of
Yes.
Mouse. And yes, they'll.
Yes.
This is like
It will be an astronaut with mouse ears that will step off the
well,
lander.
it's like our
Mouse ears on his space
the
helmet.
last time we were here, you said the all seeing eye, right? We had the pyramid, the all seeing
Yes, that's
Disney. So
right.
there
I
we
did.
go. We're
I
just
did. I did.
completing the circuit.
I did.
So I like the other
We are.
the other idea that tickles my fancy is that
Mm.
Disney World and the safari park and all the other things that Disney and others have built in
Mm.
Florida are built in a place where tourists are periodically eaten by alligators. I mean, this is a to choose
Mm-hmm.
that spot to be a mega tourist spot when you actually have man-eating creatures roaming golf courses and hotel pools. I mean, that the irony is kind of fascinating. So I imagine that they
Mm.
terraform this planet, but of course there are creatures or things there that are um, lethal, and they have to keep them at bay. So it's not just the
Well, Disney did. Was it Euro Disney that got in trouble? No, it was Walt Disney World that got in trouble because they were sending out that birds were messing with the topiary and crapping on, I don't know, lampposts and fixtures and something else. And so security guards were sent out late at night to club birds to death. And it turned out that they were a protected species, and Disney got fined for that.
they just got fined. It's like you don't have
Yeah,
to
they just
breed the
got fined, of
species
course.
back into existence. This is like, no, I'll just
Mm,
fine
no, no.
you.
But you can't. You really shouldn't be going out and clubbing them to death. It turns out.
All right, I like that. I've just put the little note here that Disney terraforms
Okay.
moon because they can run cities, and then I guess I'm going to have to make a note that something dangerous lives there too. So that's
Well, just the idea of I mean, we have there are sort of islands. There's a Welsh island can't remember the name of it now, but it's essentially just one big fun fair. And it's the idea of here is a moon that is entirely an amusement park. And therefore, because there was another thing about Euro Disney was to begin with, part of their deal was that they had to get everything from America, and that included uh, paper cups, paper plates, stationery, forks, anything that had the Disney brand on it had to be flown in from America. And so it's kind of the same thing. Here you have an entire planet that is a franchise where everything has to be belonging to that one company.
Well, I also like this. I love that entire planet is a franchise. I'm also
Mm.
thinking of this idea because it's a little decrepit. This Mickey, this idea that
Mm.
this moon was terraformed, developed into an amusement park, and it was run by Disney. It was an entire world, like we're saying, that basically had all
Mm.
this hierarchy and strata and bureaucracy and whatever.
Mm.
And then for whatever reason, the home planet, whatever, poof. And now these people are left living in this world that was designed as a Disney world. And over the
Mm-hmm.
centuries, they've had to actually make this work. But the only kind of guidance they have is the Disney manual, the sort of the Terraform manual.
Mm.
How do you run,
Mm.
amusement parks? So you get this weird situation where maybe hundreds of years later, if you were to visit this place, it's this strange blend between amusement park and planet because
Mm.
they didn't have any other starting point than amusement park, and they've had to make do since. And all the things you described, they had to become self-sufficient, they had to create new technologies, all the rest of it, and they only had the brain trust of who was there to begin with, and then of course their future generations. So what a fascinating, petri dish experiment that would be. Okay,
Mm.
well, I'm going to jump over to the next image for a moment because they're sort of similar. They're another kind of forlorn place. This is the train and the woman at the
Mm.
entrance to the train. I don't know. Maybe this is in the same place. Maybe this is
Mm.
there was a rail network that took people around the park, but this just demonstrates how overgrown it all has been. And I'm just wondering what would happen to these people, if this is their future generations. Um, I wonder what they would be like. It'd be kind of fun to imagine.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Go
okay.
ahead.
No. I mean, if they split up into management workers, like a Star Trek episode, was there a civil war that took place? Because obviously there may have been, if the cutoff was sudden enough. So let's imagine in this inconceivable universe that we're creating, the Disney goes bust overnight. Were there um, were there visitors stranded on the planet,
Mm. And those visitors would have
and
had their
therefore
own skill sets, right? Or not, lack thereof.
right? But those visitors going, well, we're here. You've got to feed us and entertain us. So it's these visitors expecting that they still get to be treated like visitors, even as society around them
So they become the
collapses.
aristocracy.
Yes, they sort of yes.
I like the idea too that there are some very talented people there because Disney normally has all this animatronics. So you'd have all these robotics
Mm.
folks who are knowledgeable in that sort of thing. Then,
Mm-hmm.
like you were mentioning, nuclear power and the terraforming. So there's probably people that do all the power management, terraforming, creating, running
Mm-hmm.
water and air, oxygen, all this kind of stuff. So you've got a whole
Mm-hmm.
science technology section, and then all these people that just want to be entertained. It's like, use your science magic to make us happy. That's the pact. Oh, okay, that's wonderfully creepy. Um, let me I don't know, just for something a little different, maybe. Do
Mm-hmm.
you this middle image with the green and the
Mm.
brown? What do you make of that?
What's something from above? Is it logging?
I think you're right. Yes, I think that's a logging operation.
It looks like it's a logging operation of some sort. It is extraordinary. All those fan shapes. Yeah. I. Um.
and the water looks strangely polluted or something. That's an odd color, or
Mm.
all this runoff or algae or something.
Mm.
Um, it's I guess part of me is sort of sad that, I mean, we need wood, but you take all these majestic forests and then you just reduce it to this, this kind of logs running off into this fetid water or something. But it also
Yeah.
is
Uh,
beautiful from a distance, and you look at it as just a bunch of
mm.
colors, and it's kind of pretty. And then you look up close and you realize what
Mm.
it is, and it's like, oh, and it looks very low tech, doesn't it? Because you've got these canoes in there on the edges.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I I'm not sure what you think about when I look at this. I sort of wonder, what is it like to actually live and work there? I mean, I can't see anybody, but I suppose we're too high up. But doing that day in day out does not look like a barrel of laughs.
No, no, and to the sort of scoured land in the top
Mm.
half
Yeah,
that just looks absolutely just mud and
it reminds me. Do you
ripped
remember
up
that film
earth.
Koyaanisqatsi where they were filming in sort of time lapse? All this stuff that
Vaguely,
was going
yeah,
on
I
the
fell
Earth.
asleep through part of
Well, it
it.
was
Yes.
very soothing with the music,
Mm.
Koyaanisqatsi, and all
Yes.
that imagery, and it was very long. Yes, the Philip Glass
Mm.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's something. It kind of makes me think of the phrase "beautiful decay." I'm going to put that in
Mm.
because there is this strange juxtaposition, isn't there, of how we're really uh, well, raping. I don't know what to call it, like pillaging the
Mm.
earth, and this is sort of an illustration of it. But in a way, it can from afar, from a perspective, it's sort of like, oh, it's a beautiful decay, and I think in a way maybe that's the problem, is that so many of us don't get a close up perspective. We have a high up perspective.
Mm.
So we're we're not really, when they show those ice floes collapsing, or in the Arctic, there's something
Mm.
majestic about it. So it's hard. I mean, you have to whip up in yourself some sort of indignation or outrage, because in itself it doesn't look terrible. It's only what people tell you that the meaning of it is. So there's
Mm.
no really good imagery for. I mean, this is probably as good as it gets to say, "Oh, this is what we're doing." But even in a way, it's kind of pretty. It's really hard to galvanize
Mm.
people around something so long term, and that we're so removed from. Uh, and I feel that maybe one of the troubles with modern life is that we keep abstracting things. Um, we do that in our financials, we do that in our intellectual conversation, we do that in so many ways that
Mm-hmm.
it removes us so much from the immediacy of it, that once in a while we'll find someone that can speak to the immediacy, and they'll get us all hot and bothered and lathered up for a moment, and then it passes,
Mm.
because we put in all these intermediaries. And there's a book that now I'm thinking of, which uh, Why Nothing Works, um,
Hmm.
which is I
I don't
can't
remember
remember
that.
the guy. Oh, he's an anthropologist. His name, the author, but he sort of was popular in the 70s and 80s, and he in this book Why Nothing Works, he talks about how there's too many kind of intermediaries between the creator and the user and the consumer of something, and that has
Mm.
created all these sort of responsibilities being outsourced to other people, to the point where this is why nothing works. And so he
Mm.
was. I remember very vividly in there. He talks about, you buy a brand new shirt or jacket, and within a week, one of the buttons pops off, and you're thinking, why did the button pop off this thing? It looks like it's well manufactured, all the rest of it. And he
Mm.
said, imagine, you know, in the Eskimo world, when when a when a, let's say an Eskimo woman in this case sews that jacket for her husband, there's no way that button's going to come off because that means death. He won't come home if that button comes off, right? So there's a direct connection between the producer and the consumer, and so there's all this
Mm.
responsibility, taken, and pride and all the rest of it. And then he was talking about how sort of in industrialization we've kind of removed, so there is no direct responsibility or pride in craftsmanship and whatnot. And so that idea, I think, is kind of a funny one because we've abstracted so many things. And I think, to get a little political about it, the financialization of everything is another form of abstraction, and
Mm.
it removes people from what is human and real and authentic and whatnot, and the responsibility of things. So I don't know. That's what I think of when I say this. If this is the opening scene of a movie, though, what do you think this is about? I mean, for one thing, there's nobody there. It looks like, right, and yet stuff is
Mm.
happening.
Well, it would be possibly about some do-gooder celebrity either arriving to do a tour of, say, the Amazon or some other area, and so they've shut down operations temporarily. It could be an environmental inspector coming in. It could be a government inspector coming in who's dealing with potential, or he hasn't received his payment from this company, and so he's come down himself to uh, impress upon the managers of this illegal uh, felling concern that they need to pay up, or he's going to do something. But when he gets there, everyone's gone.
Yeah.
So it could be a horror film.
Well, I mean, that's kind of I was thinking too that everyone's gone or everyone's dead,
Mm,
and you're wondering
mm,
why. Is this a pandemic? Is
mm,
this Was there a civil war here? What happened? Um,
mm.
I like the idea that they can't find anybody, and yet it looks like it was left just yesterday, kind of
Hmm.
thing. And then you're in the middle of this kind of rural place. There's no The next town is thousands of miles
So
away.
I think you're right. I think it has to have an environmental thing. So perhaps it's the forest taking back what's
A
its
pestilence,
own,
some kind of weird.
and seeing humanity as, I was just thinking about this the other day. There's this extraordinary, is it a fungus, I think, that gets into ants' brains,
Oh,
and then it controls them. It takes over control of the ant, and what it makes the ant do is climb up a tree over the ant hill or over wherever the thing is, and then it explodes. The head
wow,
explodes, and that releases more fungal stuff down all over the colony.
God,
And so what happens is they become these zombies, and their sole goal is to climb up and then detonate.
Jesus,
And so why not have that happen to people?
wow. Okay, so I like this because I don't like how zombie movies. I like the mood and the sort of overall arching objective of zombie movies, but I like it to be
Hmm,
somewhat scientific, and of course they're so silly and so unrealistic. But I like what you're suggesting that this.
that's it. So it is,
Okay,
just so you know, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, Ophiocordyceps
okay,
unilateralis.
spell that for me.
O P
OPH.
H I
Yeah,
O C O R D Y
yeah.
C E P S
Okay.
unilateralis.
Now, cordyceps are, I know that is related to fungus because cordyceps is a supplement you can take from a
So here you go.
mushroom or something.
And I'll do this whole thing. So, infected hosts leave their canopy nests and foraging trails for the forest floor. They then use their mandibles to attach themselves to a major vein on the underside of a leaf where the host remains after its eventual death. The process leading to mortality takes 4 to 10 days and includes a reproductive stage where fruiting bodies grow from the ant's head, rupturing to release the fungus's spores.
So this is great. So we have a kind of like a zombie picture where these
Mm-hmm.
zombies, it's not like they're trying to eat your brains, it's like they're trying to get close to you so that these things explode and infect you. So you have these sort
Mm-hmm.
of popping spores and this sort of spore rain rain spores, and you're trying to get away from these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might develop breathing apparatus, but then these guys just take it off your face and try to pop in your face. This is really creepy. Um,
Mm.
okay, so yeah, so we have a Gaia fights back sort of zombie story where whatever this person's reason for coming is, they haven't been paid or an inspector or something. They show up and they're all full of vim and vigor, and it's like, where is everybody?
Mm.
And then they get bum rushed by these creepy characters that explode with spores everywhere, and they realize that something has happened to these people. Um, maybe they were, yeah, maybe they ate a mushroom they shouldn't have.
Yes.
Because I know what it is, that there were locals there who knew what to eat and what not to eat, but they've sort of driven the locals out or killed them, whatever. And now they're
Mm-hmm.
just willy nilly taking whatever they can find in the forest. And of course, that leads, or the locals set them up for it because they knew it would happen. They wanted these guys to leave and they wouldn't leave. And so maybe this protagonist has to go to the natives and say, what the heck is happening? The natives are like, hey, mate, your problem. You brought these people here.
Mm.
Let them, they know how to protect themselves. And he's like, well, you can't let this go on. And they're like, well, we just want to make sure that nobody returns and does this ever again. So there is
Mm.
someone who knows. In fact, that could be kind of interesting in terms of, didn't we talk about McBurney's show about the tribes? He did the one man show. Yeah,
Oh, yes,
and
yes,
it
yes,
was
yes,
about the
yes, yes.
tribes that purge themselves periodically. And in the story of the book, I can't remember what it's called now, but this tribe reaches a point where it decides, and this has happened before, that it has become too infected with the modern world, the contemporary world, and it has
Mm.
disrupted the harmony of its own sort of social structure. So it makes everybody burn everything that they have relied upon or has come from contemporary society or whatever, so they can return to their sort of native roots and have a more harmonious society once more. And so this
Mm-hmm.
could be sort of like, a form of purging as far as the natives are concerned. Like, these people came in, they've been, destroying the land. They were
Mm-hmm.
themselves, horrible people. And they were affecting us because we were bartering with them and they, taking some of their technology, and it screwed us up. So we've done a purge and we've encouraged them to eat the fungus, and now they're purging. Sort of this sort of weird, oh, that's great. Okay. I love that. Thank you. So it's just like, this is like it's not like the movie The Purge, but it's Purge style Amazon, the Purge Amazon style.
Mm.
It's a zombie fungus apocalypse. Oh, okay. So coming down here to this ship that you commented on initially, um, what does this make you think of?
I mean, as an opening scene,
Hmm. I had this, yeah.
I mean, it's a fantastic site for like a gunfight, isn't it? It's a fantastic action set piece, particularly if the boats are being broken up while the fight is taking place on it.
So everyone's got their salvaging equipment. These are scary
So
saws,
something,
and
yeah, something has been, yeah, so something has been left on the ship, or something was hidden on the
I
ship,
see. It's a race against time. Who will find it first?
and someone has been sent to get that thing back.
So this is a
Um,
salvager gold rush. Right. Find find the thing. I had another. My thought was different. It was this idea that that we've been sort of we have these refugee issues that pop up, and then the people become
Mm.
sort of displaced because they can't go back to where they came from, and then the host country
Hmm.
won't let them in, and so they live in these refugee camps indefinitely, and they almost become nationless. And I was
Mm.
imagining, what if this thing was not right in the harbor like this photo suggests, but it's just into international waters. It's just far enough away from the landmass where
Mm.
and these people of these refugees have taken it over because the host country won't let them in. But if they stay here, the host country can't treat them like prisoners, so they can be just out of arm's reach and have this whole
Right.
society, and maybe the host country is not sort of doesn't have the wherewithal to destroy this thing, or if it did, it would get outrage. So it's this kind of I like this idea that just like the ship that should be traveling to somewhere, it can't. The ship can't travel. It's stuck, and the people that live on it are sort of stuck, and it's this indeterminate status. Like, who are you? And they can create their own nation, can't they? At that point, because it's a
Hmm.
bit like the Disney World thing all over again, but this the fact that they can create their own country because no one can really claim it. But it also makes me think of salvagers in general. Like when you find something in the ocean, don't you get sort of rights over it? There's a kind of salvagers rights or something. And
Hmm.
I tried to find this in the New Yorker long ago. I think it was a New Yorker. They had an article that was really interesting, and I thought, oh, this would be fun for a story idea. And it was this group of professional treasure hunters who specialized in ocean treasure hunting. And they were very well funded to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars because these operations were quite expensive. And
Mm.
when they identify a wreck that they're going to then try to salvage, they have to work very quickly and secretly because if the neighboring people discover this, they will come and try to do the same thing, and it'll be a fight basically. So you do have a situation where these operations are full of scientists, wreck divers, and mercenaries because they have to protect themselves when they go on these expeditions.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
thought, what an explosive combination! How fascinating! All these different. And so, in the story, if I remember correctly, they talked about some operation where these guys were going to get into a wreck and retrieve all these vases. So these vases were priceless, but very breakable, and they had to get them from the ocean depths while fending off other pirates and attackers and whatnot. And they basically pulled this thing off with aplomb because they got all these things out super quickly and out of there before the nation could nearby could get the resources together to claim the sunken wreck as their own. So it's the sort of race against time and an interesting group of characters. Um, so this is kind of interesting because this is salvaging above water, perhaps, but your gold rush instinct, I think, is an interesting one. It's a similar concept. Like you find these things that you can break down quickly or get to the gold, whatever it might be. That would be cool. Mm. It looks too like they've built a kind of shanty town on top of it because there's all these container-like structures stacked that maybe some of the walls have been cut out or even removed, right? So
Hmm.
these people have been here a while. And then I guess the picture next to it on the left is again, the breakers, the ship breaking. It's cool. Yeah, I don't know what you could set in the ship breakers other than what you said. There's treasure in them. There are holes. Uh,
Or something's being broken up to hide something.
hmm.
Um,
Well, let me
yeah.
come down to the bottom right then, because this is one of those one man's trash is another man's treasure possibilities. What does this make you think of? The bottle village, whatever this is.
Yes, the recycling.
This is
Yes.
the truth of recycling, right? You think that all your plastic is being so carefully recycled, and you put it in the correct bin, and then this is where it ends up, right?
Mm-hmm. It is extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, that's going to be what future archaeologists will find at our lair. It's going to be radioactive waste and plastic bags.
Right. They're going to think that this was somehow something really special and precious because it was all kept in one place and preserved.
Mm.
What would they? Yes. What would they imagine was the meaning of all this, of all these bottles? If you were to find this, you excavate, and this is what you find. For example, there was an excavation site recently. Oh no, maybe it's not recent, but I read something recently where it talked about wine in ancient times and how there was a location that is desert today that I think was in the
Mm.
Middle East, and it had huge wine operations, and it was known throughout the kingdoms, and people would pilgrimage there and get wine. There were all these traders that would buy this wine. I can't remember
Mm.
where it was. I think for some reason I think it's near, not far from Lebanon. I don't know where it is now, but they said
Mm.
that one of the things I thought was very interesting is for it was considered very fertile land because they had all these massive pigeon coop operations, and they took the pigeon poop and they used that as the fertilizer. So in the excavation, they found these aviaries that were vast, that were used as a source of fertilizer, but they also found all these pots smashed up like this in these huge landfills, and they said the pots were
Mm.
very characteristic of the region, and that's how people recognize the wine. But they store all the pots and stuff like this. So we're doing the same thing with
Mm.
plastic bottles, I guess. So we haven't changed our habits. So the excavation now is looking at those pots and using it to try to reconstruct what life was like. So yes, future generations would do the same. They would see logos on these bottles and think, I don't know, that these are different religious groups, or
Right.
Seven Up and Coca
Competing religious
Cola or
groups.
whatever.
Yes.
These must have been important factions or sects or something. Um,
Or offerings that were made to specific
oh
gods.
yes, Coca Cola God, Seven
Mm.
Up. Yes, offerings to the gods of Seven Up and Coca Cola. So that would be a great sort of product placement opportunity here. You're like, preserved in the landfill is Dr. Pepper. Who was this Dr. Pepper? He must have been very important because there's a lot of offerings to him.
Mm. Was it for medicinal illnesses?
Mm. So you can imagine the the excavators, the archaeologists. So I'm going to put down this as archaeology. So, oops, I can't spell it, but never mind. You get the idea. So if
Mm.
this is the opening scene of something, what's happening here? I mean, they've excavated, they found all these offerings or something, and but these guys are, they look like they're collecting stuff or something. Is this a gold mine in the future? Is plastic something that, because we have abolished it because it was so terrible, that this is like a lost treasure of some kind? That in the
Or is
future, this
it,
is.
again, an area that's just blighted by the existence of plastic that's never going to go away? I mean, that is, you make an interesting point, which is this could be tomorrow, this could be 100 years from now. And chances are, although the plastic, depending on whether it's still wrapped in those bags or not, may have eroded into smaller pieces, it's still
Hmm.
there.
Well, I sort of like the idea that, well, you know what, it doesn't have to write it again. One man's trash is another man's treasure. That in the future,
Mm,
there is no plastic. You know, um,
mm,
there is no plastic in the future, and thus very valuable. Maybe maybe we exhausted the petroleum and whatnot that
mm.
could be used for plastic, and now we find this, and it's like, oh my gosh, these are so rather than strip mining for minerals, we're in the future strip mining for dump sites where we can reuse
That's interesting.
reuse
Yes.
what we threw away. So future strip mining for
That's
dump
very interesting
sites.
because one of the things that people say is that if we ever did go kablooey, whatever the civilization is that rises up after us, be it humans again, be it cockroaches, be it I don't know what else, would have a much harder time because we've used all the easy to access minerals
Hmm.
and rocks and things. But we're also going to be leaving behind these other extraordinary artifacts like enormous amounts of plastic.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to also write down. I also a thought that I read recently, yesterday, I think, was somebody who said that the way that we consume things currently is a linear consumption pattern. We take this thing, we make it into something else, we use it
Mm,
up, we throw it away. And they said we need to create a circular pattern where all the things that we used before can be reused in other ways. And so that's a kind of recycling is a circular pattern of thinking. And so they
hmm.
were urging us to actually take that as far as we could and think as deeply as we could about circular patterns. So that makes me think that recycling, while it's sort of renewables, recycling, kind of a buzzword at the moment, might become, well, very likely to become, super powerful and important. And
It already
yeah,
is. The money you can make, particularly from cardboard, there are all these instances in Italy at the moment of people stealing cardboard
uh,
from recycling facilities and from around recycling bins. And of course, no one's bothering to report this because, as far as they're concerned, someone's just taken away all their rubbish. But in fact, what they're then doing is selling that cardboard themselves rather than it going to these established recycling firms and pocketing it.
hmm. So this is like trash pirates.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, specifically recycling pirates.
okay.
And at the moment, it's for paper because I think that's the easiest card because that's the easiest one to. You can't trace card. You can't dust for prints on card, as it were.
I can't spell recycle. There we go. Recycle pirates. I In fact, I was just thinking that there's a company I came across recently. I think it was called Covanta or something that takes trash, burns it for energy. So it's creating renewable energy based on trash. But you can imagine where someone says, "My God, you're just burning it. You're just what
Mm,
a wasteful way of creating energy," instead of really milking it
hmm.
for all it's worth and reusing those components in various ways. So we might get, if we get really really good at reusing energy, um, that in a way could affect our whole thinking, right? It could change
Mm,
the way we think about things. So
yes.
it could have a profound impact on society if we were to think of everything in a circular, renewable fashion. Um, Even human life, renewable, not linear. Uh,
Mm,
I when I was doing this story concept for uh, a project, I created these sort of fictitious ads for it, which I thought were kind of funny. And one of them was it was a project, for Everlife, where yeah,
yes. Yeah, I
right, right,
remember Everlife. Yeah.
you don't really ever die. And
Hmm.
and so one of the ads was a picture of a cemetery, and it said, what a senseless waste of human life, because all that cognitive material
It's good.
was valuable. Why would you just put it in the ground or burn it? I mean, what a stupid thing to do when you could take a person's brain after they're done with it and reuse it for other purposes, right? So recycling brain power, human life, this is a much more intelligent way. I guess the idea is that a person has lived their life, right? So they've made full use of their brain. That's great. And when they die, now we can use their brain for science and for society, because it now belongs to society. It doesn't belong to you anymore. You're dead. So that would be kind of an interesting storyline, I think. It's a sort of a wrinkle on what I was doing, because what I was doing was a little different, but I like this idea that your brain now belongs to society after you die, because cognitive surplus, recycling. I think we should work on that again someday. The Everlife Corporation, I think it was. Evernow was the self-help stuff. Everlife Corporation was the company.
Right.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. I think that's close to an hour. We
Thank you.
We brainstormed and we didn't get to these things up here. I don't know.
Well, we can do them next time.
Yeah, we can do them next time. I think an hour is enough for our own brains, so we don't overuse them.
I mean, but just tying into what you just said,
okay.
With that middle picture, the one that looks like, as I said, that extraordinary complex of dense building in Hong Kong that they got rid of. I had a mad idea, which was, it being that we are running out of land on which to bury people, that what you do is you build skyscrapers, and then as part of the regulations, there has to be an equivalent space underground as there is above ground. And all you do is move residents into the underground floors from the very bottom one up, and then you would simply fill the floors with earth as they died.
Wow. So this become tombs eventually, the things above ground also? Yes. Okay, I see.
Things above ground, people just keep moving in and moving out and doing whatever. But if you die in that building, you're buried in the basements of that building, the sort of minus 60 floors. Right. And so all houses from now on come with the future tombs of the people who lived there, built underneath them.
So it's a really strong sense of community. It's like, I lived here and I will die here.
Yep.
And then I will remain
If I die in this building, I will be buried in the basement of this building.
So it's a source of pride. And of course, the young person says, I don't want you buried here. I want to put you somewhere where I can enjoy, think of you different. It's like, no, we are born here. We've lived here. We will die here. It's like,
But that's it, right? But you sell it to people going, right, everything's included.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So it's like all-inclusive. We've got you covered.
You know where you're going to be. You're going to be underneath this extraordinary monument of this building above ground, where we will put your name somewhere, and we will take care of all the costs. Everything's done.
And then you go downstairs and you discover that it's really the brains are being recycled.
There you are, exactly.
But it's not what they thought.
Turn that into whatever you want.
It's not really that they're interred, and it's like that was just what we told people, but we're actually using them in some other way. Right? And what lies beneath is entirely different story. Well, I like that. I was thinking about the patterning and looking at these people and the patterning in the buildings, and also, I mean, there's a little irony here that these people in the pink PPE, as it looks like, is they are actually rendering chicken, and so I just thought that it's funny that we put chickens in coops and then we ourselves live in coops.
Have to be in these sort of coops to do it, and then
and then I sort of thought of this like you are what you eat, because we're sort of living
to eat it below.
Yeah, we're like living the life of the things that we harvest. We're living in these similar kind of structures and working in these structures, and then Yeah. And then this picture of the cafeteria I think is great because the eye goes to this woman who's eating alone who's not wearing her garb, and
Hmm.
you're thinking, what's the story there? I thought too. I
Yeah,
thought too
that's a
of
good
like
point.
being the new kid in school. You come and you go to the cafeteria. It's like, who do I sit with? You got your tray. You
Yes,
look
that's
around
very
and it's
true.
very intimidating because everyone's got their friends, and you're like the woman in the red. Okay, I'll sit by myself.
Right. Well, thank
All
you.
right.
That was great fun.
Thank you very much, and we'll do this again soon.
And see you next week.